want to join, but we'll make a start because we've got lots to get through, and I'm not the exciting bit, so I don't think anybody minds if they miss this bit. I'm Kate, I'm the Programme Manager for British Textile Biennial, and welcome to the launch of the Lancashire Textile Gallery. It's very exciting to host this event as part of this year's British Textile Biennial. We're delighted to be part of it. It's been a collaborative project with Gawthorpe Textile Collection and UCLAN, and we've been working on this for a couple of years. We've been funded by the National Lottery Heritage Fund to work on this, really as a brilliant platform to highlight the rich and diverse textile history of Lancashire. We've worked with institutions and with artists and academics to bring this together. So I want to thank all of them for being part of that. And I also want to thank Amber, who's hosting this evening. Amber Butchart has been one of the Biennial's associate curators and has done a fantastic set of podcasts, both for Lancashire Textile Gallery and for us as a Biennial. So I want to thank Amber, and I'll hand over to her in a minute. I also just want to urge you, if you haven't already, to come and see some British Textile Biennial exhibitions. We're into the last week, we close on Sunday, so if you've not joined us already, please come over the next few days, and I'll hand over to Amber to introduce the panelists.
Thanks so much, Kate, and thanks so much everybody for joining us this evening. I'm joined by an absolutely fantastic array of panelists that you can see here on the screen. We have Rachel Midgley, the curator at Gawthorpe Textiles Collection, who has been absolutely instrumental to getting this project off the ground. We have got the artists Manu Patruni and Janet Swan. We've got Alison Cooper joining us soon. She's the senior curator at Townley Hall Art Gallery and Museum in Burnley, and the researcher Esther Rollinson. So we're going to hear from everybody throughout the course of this evening. But first of all, I wanted to hand over to Rachel, who is going to give an overview of the project as a whole and how the site works. Thank you, Rachel.
Okay, I'm just going to share my screen so that I can also share the sort of visual aspect of the website as well with you. Okay, hopefully everyone can see the website now in the background. So as Kate's already said, this project has been funded by the Heritage Lottery Fund, specifically their Digital Skills for Heritage kind of arm of the funding. And it's really kind of been a 2-year project to get together this site that you'll see in front of you. I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview of the different areas of the website and how people can go about using it. And then hopefully you'll all want to come back in your own time and have a look at the website in more detail. I do urge you to kind of go and look through all of the exhibitions and collections that have been added onto there. There's a really kind of nice variety of lots and lots of different type of content, and also lots of different kind of areas of focus within those. So it's really interesting to have a look at everything that is on the site so far. And there is kind of more to come over the next couple of years that we'll keep adding, and hopefully it will just continue to grow past the end of the project, with kind of input and content that's going to be added from other venues, as well as the ones that have taken part in the duration of the project itself. So this is the main kind of homepage that you reach at the beginning of the website. There's a little overview of the purpose of the website, which has really been to kind of gather together content from different venues across Lancashire, and to showcase items that they have in their collections, and also work that they might have done with artists, academics, community groups to interpret those items. So the 2 kind of main areas of the website are exhibitions and collections, and I'll go through both of those in a minute. But really the kind of purpose of the whole website is to collect all of this stuff into one place so that people can easily find it and browse it. We've tried to keep the navigation of the website as easy as possible and as intuitive as possible so that it works for lots of different people. It's designed to be viewed both on a PC or a tablet, as well as on mobile, so it should work on all of those different devices. Again, just making it accessible for people that want to maybe view the website on different sorts of devices. So once you've got to this kind of main page, most of the navigation is done through this top menu here, and we'll go to exhibitions first. So the purpose of the exhibitions area is really just to, actually kind of showcase things that have been collected together into sets of objects. or sets of content which tell a story or explore a common theme. So this is where you'll find things that are kind of more curated sets of objects that have been put together by different people. They might be an artist, they might be a researcher or an academic. And there are also sets of objects that were brought together by community groups that we've kind of worked with to develop an exhibition out of this. All of the exhibitions have been designed to work digitally. So most of these, there wasn't ever a kind of physical counterpart to the exhibition. It was just a digital one. And that was another thing that we wanted to be really key with this website, was so that people all over the world and certainly all over the country can have access to these items and kind of view the content that's on here without having to necessarily travel to one of these venues. So if we scroll down, you can see a list of all the different exhibitions that have been on there so far. So we've got some new ones which have just been added quite recently. And then we kind of go through back to some which were added much earlier this year. They all have these different kind of banners that that we see, and you just basically click on one of these and it will take you straight into the exhibition. So I'll start off with this, which is a really nice example of one of the community exhibitions that we've worked on. So this exhibition came out of a set of workshops which were put on in conjunction between Gawthorpe Textiles Collection and Queen Street Mill. And we invited a group of just members of the public to be participants in the workshop. And part of one of the early sessions was that the curator from Queen Street brought out a really kind of varied selection of objects from the Lancashire County Council collections. And he brought those to Queen Street, and we were able to get up close to them to kind of really examine those objects in detail. And one of the things that really kind of appealed to one of the members of the group was quite a nondescript looking object that at first glance was kind of one of the less interesting pieces, but she just really kind of made a connection with this item. And that was a telephone directory which had been at Queen Street Mill, which kind of had all these different numbers and contacts for lots and lots of different companies that formed the kind of network for the mill. So it was kind of all the supporting industries that kind of went into creating the sort of network, the business network for Queen Street Mill. She was really fascinated by this piece, so she did loads and loads of research, and this kind of came out of her research that she did, where she tracked down lots of the entries. She looked at where the phone, some number codes for the phones were, so where they would be based in across Lancashire and into Manchester. And she really looked up a lot of those. And from that, then we made some connections with some of the pieces in the textile collection at Gawthorpe. So that was really kind of inspiring for us to she kind of found these references to the types of fabrics that Queen Street was printing and manufacturing. And then she also found contacts that they were then shipping out to. So they were exporting a lot of their cloth through kind of export companies in Manchester, and we actually found some fabrics in the collection at Gawthorpe that had been exported by the same companies. So that was really nice connection that we kind of didn't know about in the previously. And Anne Cochrane, who did this exhibition with us, she was able to kind of identify those links. So a couple of the items that we featured from the collection at Gawthorpe, there's some of these African export prints which were manufactured in Lancashire but designed to be shipped out to West Africa. And she was able to make a link between the company that these were exported by, which you can see one of their original labels here. So she was able to identify that this label that we had on one of the textiles at Gawthorpe was actually for the same company that was mentioned in the directory for Queen Street. So that's just one of the really nice kind of connections that formed out of those community exhibitions. And if we go back to some of the other exhibitions, we can see there are ones that were created by artists and academics, which I think some of the people that are going to be kind of talking later on, they'll probably go into more detail about those. But I just thought it'd be nice to kind of show you one of those community ones, which probably won't get discussed later on. So then going down through all the different exhibitions, they all kind of function in the same way. You'll have an introduction at the top of the page, and then you'll have the rest of the content for the exhibition. So that's usually mostly visuals, but there's also audio files and links to videos that are incorporated into there. I know we've been having a few problems with getting sound to play, so we probably won't be able to play any of the audio clips for you in this session, but I do urge you to go, after the session finishes, go back and have a look at those in your own time, and they're really fascinating to listen to. So moving on to the collections area here. This bit sometimes takes a little while to load up because one of the things we were really keen to have on this website was some really good quality photography, which is really nice for giving people a chance to look at these objects up close and to see a lot of the really nice details that are usually the most interesting parts of the textiles, are those kind of fine details that people can observe. And the only downside to it really is that it does sometimes make the website a little bit slower to load. So if you do encounter that when you're exploring it, then just bear with it. I hope the photographs are worth it in the end. So on here, we just have kind of like a real snapshot of different textile objects that are from venues across Lancashire. So there's a lot of things from Gawthorpe Textiles Collection because we've been so involved in setting up this site, but there are also lots of pieces from other venues across Lancashire. When we talked about sort of Lancashire textiles and what that meant, we didn't just necessarily mean that they were textiles that were made in Lancashire, although there are lots of those on here. We also really were keen to encompass textiles which were now kind of housed in collections in Lancashire. So it's not just about textiles that were produced as part of the textile industry or, you know, by people living in Lancashire. It's also items that were collected and donated by people that lived in Lancashire, and obviously pieces that have kind of made their way into museum collections across Lancashire. And we also were really keen to have that kind of Lancashire terminology be the sort of historical county of Lancashire, which kind of includes Manchester and Liverpool in as well, because at the time that a lot of these pieces were made, they were still seen as being made in Lancashire. And the same goes for kind of when they were collected. So that was kind of another way of defining Lancashire textiles that we kind of came up with for this project. So as we go through some of these different objects here, you can start to see, I hope, some of the kind of range of things that there are on here. I'll pick an item that's proved really popular on this website. So these are a set of 3 sample books that are from the Queen Street Mill collection. And these are not really kind of publicly viewable anywhere at the moment. I think one of them might be going on display later this year, but they've kind of historically not been publicly accessible. So we were able to photograph these, and they're really fantastic records of the types of fabrics that were available at the time. They're very kind of exciting, I think, for anyone that's interested in both fashion or kind of furnishing textiles. They date from the 1820s and 1830s, which is a really sort of dynamic period for fabric design and fabric production. It's a time when there was a huge amount of technological advances happening kind of very rapidly. And the sort of relationship between printing capacity and dyeing capacity was kind of being pushed to, you know, to the extreme to kind of produce the latest, most fashionable, kind of newest designs on fabric. And these books are a really good snapshot of that, where there are really kind of groundbreaking techniques being showcased in these and experiments being done, some more successful than others. And then the notes that go with them actually kind of talk about how successful those experiments have been. So they make for really fascinating reading if that's the kind of thing that you're interested in. And although we were able to photograph almost all of the entire books, obviously we haven't got space to put those all on this one page, but we have put a summary of them on. So part of the purpose of showcasing these items on here is really to kind of encourage people to get in touch with those venues and ask to see them if they want to. These are things that maybe haven't really been on display before, and I think it would be good to kind of show that there is interest in these types of objects so that they do get used more by the collections that hold them, and they do get kind of made more publicly accessible. So when you kind of access one of these collections pages, you'll see on the left, you've got all the images, and then on the right, you'll have some details at the top, which are kind of the most interesting, the most kind of like basic kind of bits of info, including which venue or collection holds it. And then there'll be a bit of a write-up of the item just to give you a summary of its context and its importance. And then down at the bottom are the tags that we've assigned to it. So we wanted to make sure that this collections area was really useful for people. So people who are doing research, but also people who are just browsing for kind of visual inspiration as well. So you can use these tags to search for things. So if you, say you're looking at things that are, samples and commercial textiles, you can click on this and it will then bring up all of the other collection items that have been added on here that have that same tag with them. So that's a kind of really nice, fast, quick, easy way of searching for something, is basically to find something similar to what you're looking for and then use the tags to browse further. And you can also use the search function here, which kind of has a option just to type in a word. So you can see just here, it's really easy. You can just type in anything, and if it mentions it either in the tags or the description, it'll bring up relevant search results. So those are the two main ways that we're hoping people will kind of browse through the collections. You can use specific searches either by word or by tag, and then you can also just kind of browse. You can go back to this main screen and literally just kind of scroll through and see whatever kind of appeals to you. So there's a really wide variety of things on there. And then if you find something that you like, you can also use this sort of function here. When it says the venue that it belongs to, you can click on that and it will take you to the contact details for the museum or venue that holds that collection. So that's the idea, that if you do want some more information, or you want to inquire about maybe whether that is on display, then that will take you to the contact details and you can kind of pursue it further yourself. The last thing that I'll mention really briefly is we've built in some functionality for the website where people can actually, sorry, I'm just going to minimize Zoom because it's sitting right on top of the button that I want to use. You can create an account here. And then once you've created an account, you can actually favorite items, which will start to kind of curate your own set of items that you can come back to easily. You can also favorite exhibitions as well if you want to kind of revisit a whole exhibition. And you can also, as part of this, leave comments on items. So once you, let me find one that's got a few comments on, once you're signed in, once you've got your account set up and you've signed in, you can actually then go and leave comments on the exhibitions and the items that are on here, and hopefully kind of start a bit of a discussion about the pieces. So here you can see that somebody has left a comment about this one, that it kind of reminds them of a nostalgic sort of childhood memory. There are other ones where people have actually been intrigued by a piece of terminology that was used to describe an item. They've gone and done some research into that, and then they've actually come back to post, so that if anyone else is looking for that definition or looking for a bit more detail, then they've got kind of access to that information as well. So that's kind of the type of thing that we're really hoping people will do more of in the future. So as people visit the collections and the exhibitions on this site, that they will start to discuss them, and hopefully we'll get some, even more kind of information about the items coming up from those comments and discussion. So I think that's pretty much everything to say about the website. So I'll hand back over to Amber.
Thanks so much, Rachel. Absolutely brilliant. It is so great to see how it's all come together. As someone who's been involved at sort of like various different stages of the project, like seeing it all like this is wonderful. And I'm hoping that, I'm guessing everyone who's attending is interested and has maybe got the website up, but just in case they haven't, if maybe Jack or Kate, you might be able to put some links into the chat for everyone so they can have the website, and maybe the podcast series that we did where I spoke to some of the curators of some of these collections as well for more information. Fantastic. So thanks, Rachel. Next, I would love to speak to Madhu about your brilliant Threadbare Narratives commission. Could you please, first of all, tell us a bit about yourself and your work as well?
Thank you, Amber. It's a real privilege to be on the panel today. So my name is Madhu. I'm based in Peterborough at the moment. I'm a visual artist. I work with multiple materials, draw, paint. I also work with digital as my material. But more recently, I've been working with textiles. So I'm originally from India, so a lot of my influences are based around my roots in India, and my influences while I was growing up there. When I grew up in a huge network of family, a lot of aunties who wore beautiful saris. I have the themes of goddesses and folklore, and of course I also grew up with colonial histories, which is one of the more difficult themes to work around. So I moved to the UK in the late 90s. So a lot of my work is about making sense of this move and working between different countries and living between the two, going back to meet my family, coming back, and also the themes around living here, you know, living without the network of the family, living alone, the loneliness and dealing with it. And working with my hands, I guess, is my way of making sense of this constant move between the continents. And I've also been looking at ways of connecting with my local community here as well. And so more recently, I've been working in textiles, which allowed me to connect with women of color who've migrated, who've been in the similar situation. And I felt textiles kind of allowed me to work with complex themes that arose from conversation about lived experiences as such. And I also worked with a local migrant community here in a refugee center, local refugee center as well, where we co-created textiles for the center. So, but more recently, I also got a grant from Arts Council to research into Indian textiles called chins, which are available widely in the collections in UK, and their roots in India and their influences of British textiles generally.
Amazing, thank you very much. I'm such a huge fan of your work. You're able to cover so many different areas in such there's such depth to it, but also such beauty. And I'm really keen for you to give us an overview of Threadbare Narratives, specifically your piece, which is currently on display at Queen Street Mill as part of the Textile Biennial, but also available online through the Lancashire Textile Gallery. So if you're able to share online some of the pages and give us an overview of Threadbare Narratives, that would be fantastic.
Yes, so I'm just going to share my screen here. A second. So Threadbare Narratives actually came about from this larger project I've been researching into the Indian textiles and their influences generally as well in the early textile industry in Lancashire. So I've been visiting V&A, Whitworth and British Museum and looking at the chins textiles specifically. I will go through some of this similar to this skirt here. So there have been many skirts and pinafores, and I've seen domestic items as well, beautiful colors, almost jewel-like prints from early 1800s. And so it's made me think about the links to back in India, because these chins are rooted in a specific textile called kalamkari. And I've grown up with kalamkari, but I didn't know of this historical link to the British textiles industry and also their popularity in early 18th century as well in Europe and in Britain. So I've been reading up a lot about the history and looking at the textiles as well. And I also made a visit to the kalamkari as it exists now in India. And for me, these textiles are historic documents. In them, they have stories, they have connection back to the land where they were produced. So looking at how they were made, they would have used local cotton, they would have used locally grown dyes. So there's a lot of knowledge in them that is linked to the land itself and how to grow those dyes, how to make the inks, and how to work with them. They would make their own pens. That's the name kalamkari comes from. Kalam itself is a bamboo pen, which they used to draw these motifs. So I've also been reading about their popularity in Britain and how this led to a ban of these Indian imports as a protectionist move. And I wanted to find out a little bit more about what the ban did to the women, how did they, what it meant in real terms. So I found a little clipping from a newspaper clipping dated 1768, which is fining women. I think it's 5L is £5 in the terms in those days. I think I've done a quick translation recently, and it comes up to around £450 roughly in today's money. So they were being fined for wearing something incredibly comfortable and probably very colorful as well. So I kind of had a feeling, this is the beginning of discomfort in these textiles that's hidden in them. And of course, eventually, India has been one of the largest exporters of cotton textiles up till 18th century, and eventually they declined with the Lancashire printed textiles being replaced as the major exports elsewhere all over the world. So I was also looking at the early print history. I know that printing moved to Lancashire from London, and I inquired about the early print history, and found some. I'm just going to show some wood blocks. Yeah, I've been visiting Helmshire and Haworth, and found huge number of wood blocks that would have been used to print the calico printing, it's called, and finishing. So so I've been going around trying to see what the designs look like, and I was also looking at possibility of finding something similar to Chin's designs. I did find a lot of floral motifs, and but unfortunately nothing too close to Chin's. I guess somebody with design expertise would be able to kind of find how old these wood blocks are. So they, again, I found Accrington to be the center of printing as well. I mean, as Rachel showed earlier, the Rosebank dye journals, I had an opportunity to see them, but this was a little bit after, it came a little bit after the project. So they haven't made it to the website, but they are part of my work out for Threadbare Witnesses. So, I mean, visiting, being in Lancashire, going around the museum, visiting especially the Queen Street Mill, and I mean, as I mentioned earlier, I've grown up with the colonial histories, the links in textiles, especially in my home. We were pretty used to using handloom cottons, and we were aware of the history. So it came, and it gave me an opportunity to respond to being in Lancashire, in the mill, and it's an amazing space. It's incredibly beautiful. But it also provided me a way to join up both the histories when I collected the materials, and I kind of tried to make sense of it. I mean, working with hand stitching for me is kind of trying to make sense and trying to bring together both the histories. And it's often quite difficult and challenging as well to process what's going on as an artist, when you're responding to them. So this is a hand that's made out of handloom cotton. It's been dyed using natural dyes as well. And within the hand and under it are the threads that I collected from Queen Street Mill to kind of represent these entangled histories as well. So this is all my work trying to make sense of the knowledge of dyeing as well, which made its way eventually to Britain through many routes, I think. And I'm trying to think about the routes, the journeys the textiles made, the knowledge made as well. And
Absolutely fantastic. Yeah, this is what I was just going to ask about, actually. Just finally, are you able to just talk us a bit through through this, which is currently on display at Queen Street Mill?
Yeah. So this work was made using co-creation as a space to kind of share my research findings, and also sharing the skill of block printing and the existence of the block printing history here in Lancashire as well. So this was made in a community workshop. And I also chose Tree of Life motif because I'm interested in the mythical ideas a lot. I'm quite drawn to them. And the Tree of Life is one such motif. And also it connects us back to nature as well as the textiles did. You know, they were made using natural resources. And the tree itself connects us back to nature. So that's how it was made. Yeah, that was the final. So all these works are, along with other things, on display at the Queen Street Mill.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I really recommend everybody, if you haven't yet visited, if you can get to Queen Street Mill over the course of the next week while the biennial is still on, I would really recommend it. It is so atmospheric, seeing it all within the space of Queen Street, where you still have, you know, parts of machinery moving, and it's just wonderful. It's fantastic. Maddie, thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
And next, I believe we have Alison Cooper. Thank you so much. I know it's been a bit tight for you to get here, Alison, so thank you very much. Alison is Senior Curator at Townley Hall Art Gallery and Museum in Burnley. So Alison, please could you first of all tell us a bit about the history of Townley Hall and your role there as well?
Yeah, sure. Townley Hall is the museum and art gallery for the town of Burnley. We're set in a beautiful acres of park. It's a huge parkland, and the museum building itself was the home of the Townley family for over 600 years. So it's got a lot of history in the building. We're a bit different to a usual historic house because unlike places like the National Trust, we didn't actually inherit that many objects from the family. So in 1902, when Townley Hall came into the ownership of Burnley Borough Council, there's a myth that there was only one table in the hall at the time when it was sold. So we have tried to acquire different pieces that link back to the family, and that means we've got a very varied collection. We do have textiles, but we also have ancient Egyptian objects. We have South American Peruvian objects. We've got an amazing collection of Victorian oil paintings. We've got watercolour collection, book illustrations, and so on, social history objects as well, and a lot of things that relate to the local area as well. We do have a textiles collection. It's not as huge, but we do have some important pieces in that collection.
Thank you. It is an absolutely amazing collection. I was at Townley Hall very recently with Kate, in fact, and it was, you know, just fantastic looking around how much there is that you can see. Now, one of those things is something that I wanted to focus on this evening, because you have an absolutely remarkable and incredibly rare collection of vestments, the Whalley Abbey vestments. Can you please tell us about them, and how did they come to be at Townley?
Yeah, so the Whalley Abbey vestments. So Whalley Abbey is around 10 miles away from Burnley, so it's quite local. One of the stories to do with the family, and there's quite a few different branches of the story that bring some extra interest into the hall, is that during the Reformation, they remained a Catholic family. So they went against the grain of the royal family at the time when it was made illegal to practice the Catholic faith, and the family stuck with this. We've recently had somebody come to verify that we've got the largest priest hide in England in the building, so they were quite dedicated to the cause, and with that the family were able to rescue a set of vestments from Whalley Abbey when the abbey was closed down. And so when it was made illegal for that faith to be practiced in the country, many of these textile pieces were taken away and made into tablecloths or very utilitarian objects that would eventually wear away. Now, the vestments that we have in the collection, there was a set of 3 items in the collection, and we were able to purchase 2 of them when they were put up for auction. So you can see in the pictures, they're absolutely incredible. The detail, you can see they depict the story of the Virgin Mary, right through from her parents being married, through to the birth of Jesus Christ, and even to some gruesome parts of Herod killing children when he found out that there was possibly somebody around that might threaten his power structure. So it's a real elaborate piece of textiles, and there's 2. There's the chasuble, which is this picture we can see now is the dalmatic, and that would have been worn by somebody who was not the priest, but somebody who was more like a deacon who would have been working with the service. And then the chasuble, which is the one that's more of the oval shape, that would have been worn by the priest, and they would have been used in very high masses. And once they were rescued from the abbey, they were used in the chapel, because Townley Hall has its own chapel. They were used in the chapel for hundreds of years for worship. So they're a very special object linking into the hall, but they're also so special because they are the only example of their kind in England. And they are very exquisite. The detail of the fabric, it's in the background there is a cloth of gold, which is Italian cloth of gold. But then on top of that fabric, there's lots and lots of detail. And the people who would have been making these vestments would have been based in London, and it would have been a 7-year apprenticeship to learn the skills to be able to develop this product. And they were very sought after in Europe. England was really leading the way in this type of embroidery with the skills, and yeah, they're just very special to us. And I know we've when we did the podcast about these, we talked a bit about the strawberries, or the fruit, as we could say, because on the vestments you can see these red fruits that are almost 3D. They've got a velvet texture to them. And I think if we're thinking back at that time when people's lives were so much more insular, just so much more insular, to see something, a fruit like that, to be almost that 3D texture must have been quite mind-blowing. But there are a few things written about the fruits, which are, they're written about as strawberries, which links into symbolism with the Virgin Mary. It links into righteousness, that they were the right people to have been brought into the world to have that role within the Catholic faith. And the leaf of a strawberry has 3 elements to it, like the Holy Trinity, which is very important in the faith. And strawberries kind of bow down to the ground, so they're almost that humble symbol as well. But they're very, very beautiful. And the strawberries, when you look at them in detail, you might think they don't quite look like strawberries, but I think that's kind of a bit of a mystery in itself, because I do wonder in the medieval times what references people had. I've seen other artwork that's been produced and people may be having to work off memory because they wouldn't have had any, it would have been difficult even to do illustration, through to having the actual real fruits available only a short period of the year. So they are quite mysterious, the strawberries, which I do like about them. Some people say they could be pomegranates, but they do have that very dimpled texture to them as well with the velvet. So yeah, they have left us with a mystery, which is quite nice.
I love them. They're just so absolutely exquisite. I can't believe that they were worn for centuries. Like, I assumed they're in such incredible condition that I assumed they'd just been kept in a darkened, you know, incredibly good conditions for centuries, but they were actually used.
They were used, but they would have been used only at specific masses throughout the religious calendar. We do still hold a Catholic Mass for the Townley family once a year, and that's coming up this weekend, which links into All Souls and All Saints anniversary. So they would have been used, but just very sparingly. And the colours of them as well, they would have been used for High Mass, and they would have been used in specific special occasions. You could almost imagine the candles lighting up the chapel and then flickering onto the gold elements of the threads, and really kind of giving that awe that I think religion did give to people back in those times, and especially when they were worn originally at Whalley Abbey, you know, in quite a large architectural building, and that idea of quite a lot of grandeur and wealth. So yeah, they're very, very special objects in our collection.
Absolutely. And it is remarkable, the different types of stitches, like this, you know, this type of Opus Anglicanum is just almost unfathomable. Like, it is such skilled work. It's unbelievable. And what's great is that the photography here in the Textile Gallery really allows us to see all of those different stitches close up. So it's almost like, even when you see them in person, it's obviously awe-inspiring. You're kind of like, wow, but you really get a sense when you get to see them in this much kind of detail and this sort of close up of, you know, how skilled this work is, and the different types of stitches and the different types of threads that are going into this. So amazing. So just finally, as a curator of a Lancashire collection, how important is the Lancashire Textile Gallery in bringing together all of these stories?
I think it's extremely important for Lancashire, and especially for areas that have been heavily involved in the textile industry over such a long period of time, because it did leave a mark on the landscape with housing stock. It's totally shaped the way people actually live even now, textile heritage in the area. And having this area to bring museums together and collections together and archives together, and to bring new artist work that's reflecting different narratives, I think is really important, because sometimes you can be a smaller organisation, and to have this collective voice looking at textiles and really being able to be a resource for people further away to engage with our collections is really important. And to get our collections online, because a lot of the time we are small institutions, and we really want to get, you know, our 30,000 objects online, but it is taking us a long time. So to have this opportunity to have things available for people to research is really amazing for us. And hopefully it will help people to come and find us as well and come and visit.
Excellent, excellent. Alison, thank you so much. Thank you. So I wanted to stick with the theme of ecclesiastical textiles, but move to Esther Rollinson. Esther is a PhD researcher. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. Firstly, Esther, can you tell me a bit about your PhD research area?
Yeah, so I'm in about halfway through a PhD at the University of Manchester, which is entitled, and I have to check this because I always forget, Revisiting the English Catholic Household, Faith, Family and Identity. And it's essentially an exploration of Catholic households in the long 18th century, and especially the role of women in Catholic households in creating spaces for the practice of faith, as well as kind of fashionable spaces. And I look at how objects of faith sit alongside objects of fashion in the household, and how they interact, and how that space is curated, both for the kind of for facilitating faith in the space, but also for the construction of Catholic communities and Catholic identities as well.
Fantastic, thank you. Now, how has this fed into the research paper that you put together as a commission for the Lancashire Textile Gallery? And feel free to share, you know, some of the pages of the research from the gallery as well.
Of course, I'll just do that now, bear with me. here we are. This is the piece. So as I said, my focus being so much on women throughout the project, textiles are a huge part of how women engage with faith throughout the early modern period, undeniably longer than that. You find women making textile objects to continue the practice of their faith. You see as well, as we've seen in the example at Townley, women are integral in the preservation of objects from the pre-Reformation period for their continued use in household spaces. And so my interest in textiles kind of grew from there, this real sense that the women that I was studying depended on and used textiles all the time. And I got in touch with Rachel at Gawthorpe and was asking about what material they had. And these pieces, the ones that I've eventually written about, are the objects in their collections, which have this ecclesiastical use. They're not English textiles. They are European, from Italy, from Spain. But in this period, in the period in which I studied, sort of long 18th century, there's a remarkable trade, a remarkable movement of English Catholics between Europe and England. And you find an awful lot of family members studying, living in Europe in this period. And so there is a real trade in objects, a real trade in goods between the continent and English Catholic households. And so the objects at Gawthorpe really allowed me to kind of explore the nature of what these objects were, what kinds of things are coming over to England in the 18th century from Europe for Catholic worship. What do they look like? What are they being used for? What size are they? Who are they being made by? Those kinds of questions.
And can you talk us through some of the pieces that you've been investigating, like this one here, for example, but also the methods that you've been using for this particular type of research as well?
Of course. So I looked at 3 objects in the collections at Gawthorpe. So the first one here, I'm going to scroll too much so people can't see, but this is a collar fichet, a word I had not encountered before meeting Rachel at Gawthorpe. But essentially the design of this, it depicts a sort of floral motif, which is very, very common in textiles and in Catholic textiles, with floral images having particular connotations, particular meanings. So you've got this floral kind of garden in the background, and then you've got the Jesuit Saint Aloysius Gonzaga, who's depicted in the middle. But what's kind of quite unique about the collar fichet as an object is that the design is almost the same on the back as it is on the front. And so a board of I think this is a sort of paper, is punched. The pattern that you want, the design that you want, is punched in small holes onto the paper, and then the thread is passed from one side to the other, often by 2 people working together, and Rachel might correct me on this, and the passing of the thread from one side to the other makes the design the same on both sides, and so this is why it's in the case like this, because you can see it would look the same if you were to see it from the back as well. The other example was an embroidery depicting the head of Christ. There's one here. This is late 18th century, and we think Spanish. And another, which I don't want to say that I had a favourite, but if I had to say, probably would be this one. So this is an 18th century, and it's more of a collage. It's not an embroidery. This has been made by cutting. So the maker has cut out tiny pieces of silk ribbon or silk fabric and stuck them together, stuck them on top of each other to create again this almost certainly symbolic floral design. And yeah, so in each of these examples, should probably say we don't know for certain, but there's certainly an enormous amount of material being made in convents at this time, European convents, and it may well be that some of these examples need to do sort of further research into the objects, but it may well be that they were made in convents at that time and then sold as souvenirs, as tokens, as ways of making money, raising money for the convent, the religious institution. In terms of the methodology, so I used on each of the pieces, and again, I'll show the example that I've just shown, the silk collage. In each of the pieces, I used a digital microscope to look at the composition, the production process, the materials that had been used to make each of the objects. And you can see here, this is a close-up of one of the flowers that's making that kind of collage garden. And you get a sense of the scale, you get a sense of the fineness, of the detail, of the dexterity of the maker that's behind these objects. You know, looking at the bottom, the scale of this picture is the red scale at the bottom. I don't know if you can see my mouse, but the red scale being a millimetre. Really seeing how finely cut the petals have been for this flower. Just drawing on something which Alison mentioned when she was speaking previously, we looked at metal thread, the composition of metal thread that had been used in the collar fiche. And you can really see using the microscope how metal thread has been constructed. And so you can see here that usually a flattened piece of gold or silver, or whichever the metal is that the artist, the craftsperson is using, it's been flattened and then wound around this silk core, and you get a sense then of how light interacts with these pieces, why it is that they glisten in the way that they do, the ways in which the craftsperson is consciously integrating this into the objects that they're making, so that they have particular effects in religious spaces. Yeah, so the microscopy really kind of helps with that, to see the quality of the silks, the nature of the gold threads that are being used as well.
It's amazing. I love it so much. And what's fantastic again about this being all, you know, sort of preserved here on this site now, is that we can see those really super close-up kind of microscope images as well. Just absolutely amazing. So just finally, as well as the images that you've gone through here, what was the other kind of product of your research for the Lancashire Textile Gallery? And can you just show us where we can find it on the site?
Yes, so just bear with me because I'm trying to navigate Zoom and
sorry.
No, this is my lack of technical skill. So the images here and fragments of the research are presented here, as you can see, but you can read a whole report of the research here. So this will give you a PDF, and this again, you can see here the microscope setup, how the microscope works, some of the more technical things about the level of magnification that we used to create the images, and a more kind of contextual information about where these objects are coming from, and the cultures of travel and exchange in which they're being acquired. Yeah.
Amazing. That's fantastic. Thank you so much.
No worries.
Talking us through it. So brilliant. Thank you. So next I wanted to speak to Janet Swan. Janet is an artist who's had a varied career in the NHS, libraries and in the arts. And she brings her interest in therapeutic reading and music together to investigate what it is about those moments of flow that is so magical for us as human beings, and tries to find musical expressions of this magic. And it's very much music that I wanted to talk to you about in terms of your piece for the Textile Gallery. But first of all, please, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your work?
Oh, hi, thanks very much, Amber. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. So it's been really fascinating to be in this Zoom meeting, because I've been hearing all these amazing stories from Madhu, from Esther, from Rachel, and from Alison about the various collections, and about how these beautiful objects tell stories. And yeah, expressing that in music is just what absolutely turns me on. So yeah, I'm really interested particularly in music, how it connects people, and how these different skills that you've been talking about connects people as well. So Esther, when you were saying about the passing of the thread between two people, that's how amazing that would be to capture that in music, the kind of the passing of the thread as a rhythmic and a shared moment of magic, because that will be something that will have happened between those two women. They will have had all the conversation around it as well. So yeah, those moments that really make us feel safe enough to share with each other and to be present, you know, to forget our phones and just be with each other, that you know, textile creation and music making can bring together. So yeah, this is just so exciting.
Now, your piece for the Lancashire Textile Gallery is called Rhythm of the Looms, which already has music to it. It sounds incredibly poetic. Are you able to share some of the imagery of it on the screen? And also, I'd love to hear about what inspired it. Just tell us about this piece, and also especially about Ethel Carney Holdsworth as well, who I believe was a key inspiration for you.
Yeah, okay, so I'll start with that point about Ethel Carney Holdsworth, who we've been studying as a team as part of the Pendle Radicals project, which was part of the Pendle Hill Landscape project. And she was an amazing woman who started life as a mill girl, a half-timer at age 11, meaning she was at school half the week, and then working in the mill the other half of the week, full-time by 13. But then she, the rhythm of the looms is what she said caused her to start writing poetry. She was also a great reader. She used to queue on the steps of the reading room at the cooperative reading room in Great Harwood, where she lived. So she's an East Lancashire lass. She read a lot, but she also started writing poetry. And then she ended up getting noticed by Robert Blatchford, who was the proprietor of the Clarion newspaper, to go down to London to work on his new newspaper called The Woman Worker. I better just check that. I feel like I've just said that wrong. I think it is The Woman Worker. Where is it? Yes, The Woman Worker, that's it. So yeah, she ended up in London writing articles, and she became very radical because she wanted to tell the story of Lancashire's textile workers, particularly women, and how life was so hard for them, and really resulted in slavery. So she was very anti-capitalist, and she wove all these stories of Lancashire mill girls, of working women in various contexts into she wrote 10 novels. She's thought to be the first working class woman to write and have novels published in this country. So she's an amazing figure, and because we'd researched her as part of Pendle Radicals, we have been producing podcasts about her, and bringing her story back to life. But the other thing, so she started with this this whole thing about the rhythm of the looms. And if I share this little bit of screen with you, you can see that it was particularly the jacquard looms, which were kind of like the first computers, really, that told the jacquard looms, the cotton looms, how to print, what pattern to print. And if you compare it, if I just move this over there, with how music is created digitally these days, you can see this amazing pattern, and that really excited us. We kind of wanted to use digital music to express some of those rhythms. So we sampled the rhythm of the jacquard loom, which is Queen Street Mill. You can go in any time that it's open. Usually, I think that mill, that loom would be available to listen to. Just the incredible, intricate rhythms that it plays, as well as its, the patterns that it produces in the material. So we combined the two. We brought Ethel and her story and her poetry into music that was has these samples of the jacquard looms. Sadly, we can't play it for you today because of the sound issues that we've had. At least I think that's still the case, unless Jack can tell me otherwise.
I've not been able to fix it, but I have linked it in the chat for everyone to listen to. So there is a SoundCloud link there.
That's fantastic.
Thanks, Jack. That's brilliant. So I love this. This is amazing that Ethel Carney Holdsworth was sort of the beginning of your research journey. And you've sampled the looms from Queen Street as Mill as well. What other collections did you use? What was your research process and the process for creating the soundscape as well?
Well, we sampled the loom sounds, and obviously we researched into Ethel's poetry, and we wanted to select words that told a story. So we kind of envisaged this idea of somebody going to work as part of the huge stream of humanity, trying to get to the mill at 6 o'clock in the morning, and having to work all day to earn a bit of bread to keep the family going. Just expressing some of that hardship, but ending with kind of Ethel's vision that she wanted to change things for the textile workers of Lancashire. She wanted them to have more time off so that they could get out into the open air to breathe the starshine and the sunlight into their lungs. This was one of her quotes, so that they could just have some time, some downtime, and so those pauses that you see on the cards, on the jacquard loom cards, are just as important, and the gaps in the music are just as important as the actual rhythms. As part of the process, that was all something that fed into it. Also, Scott Robertson, who was my collaborator, was really interested in the film Humane Trop Humane, which is all about humans becoming automatons. So that was kind of something that fed into it. And also another really big part of it was that we were both really interested in rhythm and what it does to our souls. And there's lots of research in neurological fields about how it regulates us, makes us much calmer, much more connected. So again, you see all these things about the connection between people. Did Ethel, was she not only inspired by the rhythm of the looms, but was she made to feel this huge part of something really important, that the people who kept these looms going, the people that kept the whole of Lancashire going by all the money that was made in the textile mills? Was she, did she feel that she was really part of something, and that and she was moved and inspired that she could do this? She was just a mill girl. Who was she to start telling the world about how things were for Lancashire women? Was there something much more to it about the connection that she felt with the solidarity with her fellow workers?
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for sharing that, and thanks, Jack, for putting the links in the chat as well. I really recommend everybody takes a listen, and you can have a look. I believe there are images of the jacquard cards as well on the site, so you can have a look in a lot of detail at everything Janet has been discussing, as well as listen as well. So thank you so much, Janet. Absolutely wonderful. And finally, I would like to bring back Rachel Midgley, curator at Gawthorpe Textiles Collection. Now, Rachel, could you just begin by telling us a little bit about the history and the present of the collection at Gawthorpe, please?
Yes, so Gawthorpe Textiles Collection was founded by a woman called Rachel K. Shuttleworth, and she was the last member of the Shuttleworth family to live at Gawthorpe Hall. So that is where the collection has been based for the last 70 years nearly. We are just in the process of a very exciting kind of period of change for the collection. So we are moving the storage part of the collection to a new venue. The textile galleries that we've kind of had for the last 50 years will still be remaining at Gawthorpe. So kind of outwardly, public facingly, there won't be a big change in what people can see at Gawthorpe. But the storage areas and also the study facilities that we have had kind of in the past will be moving to this new location, which will mean we'll have much nicer facilities and really importantly, much better conditions for the textiles. So that new venue is in Briarfield, so it's about 10-minute drive away from Gawthorpe Hall. And yeah, really exciting new chapter for the collection, and a lot of hard work ahead of us in the next few months, but it should be a big improvement for the collection for the future.
That's amazing. Huge congratulations. It's very, very, very exciting indeed for the collection, because it is such a fantastic collection. We've seen already through some of the other people who've been speaking this evening about the enormous range within the collection itself. And it's quite difficult to narrow down to get you in just a sort of 10-minute slot to talk about what's in the collection, because it is so enormous. But I thought maybe we could focus, or you could do a little bit of a dive into some pieces which I know both you and I are a real fan of. And that is the pieces, the wool dress samples from Sabden. I have links to them here if you would like me to share them, or you
I've just searched for them and found the set that we've uploaded onto the website. So I will just share my screen and we can have a look at some of those. They are fantastic. They're some of my favourite items in the collection as well. I think at first glance I saw them and I was a bit like they're a bit ugly, but they've really, really grown on me, and I love them now. They're very, this is a set of, and we've got about 9 of them, I think, uploaded onto the site here. So you can see a little summary of them here, and I'll click on one that I know me and Amber both really like, which is this grapes one.
Yeah.
And these are part of a set of just over 90 print samples, which are all attributed to the Robert Hindle and Co. Printworks, which is based in, or was based in Sabden, which is a small village in Lancashire, not that far away from Gawthorpe. So it's really nice to have these pieces with such a local connection in the collection. But the thing that is so amazing about these in particular is just the vibrancy of colour and the sort of wackiness of the patterns that appear on them. We think that most of the samples that we have date from between sort of 1860s and the 1880s or 1890s. And a lot of them are still actually using block printing as a technique, which is another sort of unusual thing that we maybe wouldn't expect about samples from that period. It really, I think, seeing that and seeing these samples really made me appreciate how much the sort of printing industry just adapted new technology into their existing way of working, but didn't always just replace the old technology if that was still something that did best. So I think because a lot of these have got these very blocky kind of vibrant areas of colour, they're still quite well suited to block printing, and it was the really fine details, outlines and kind of speckling and things like that that were less well suited for block printing that quickly got replaced with things like cylinder printing. So I think these samples represent a really interesting combination of kind of new and old techniques being used to produce really up to the minute patterns that would have been incredibly fashionable for the period that they were being created in. And it also, I think when you look at the patterns of these, they really are the cutting edge of what was fashionable. And it's amazing to think that these kind of incredibly high fashion fabrics were being produced in somewhere as small and kind of out of the way as Sabden, and then presumably being distributed across the country for these sort of wealthy, fashionable women to wear in their wardrobes. Just
absolutely fantastic. I love that it it looks like something from the 1930s as well, this one in particular. It's just so remarkable that it's actually, you know, sort of mid-Victorian piece. I just think they're absolutely, and the colours are just so exquisite. I love them so much, so much. Now, as a curator of a collection in Lancashire, how important is the Lancashire Textile Gallery in bringing together all of these stories, especially for you, who has really kind of overseen and grown this project?
I think I'll just kind of reiterate what some of the people have said, you know, particularly Alison, about having an opportunity to share stories about your collection. I think as well, it's been really useful for us as a collection to find links with other local connections. So, you know, piecing together pieces of material in our collections that link to other items that are being held in other collections that are not that far away distance wise, but it's just we've not ever had chance to kind of work collaboratively in this way and actually really pick up on some of those connections. So that's been particularly rewarding, I think, to start to make those connections with other venues that then you hope will kind of lead to a sharing of knowledge, you know, maybe you know, sort of projects that will build on those initial connections that will lead to a better understanding of those textiles, more availability of them to the public, so that whether that's physically displaying them or just having them more digitally available, I think it really kind of helps if you have that sort of shared connection, so that there are more than one venue's worth of people pushing for those items to be shared. It really adds weight to the kind of need for money and time to be spent digitizing these items so that they can be shared more widely with people. And I think as well, you know, I think Alison touched on this a little bit about being a smaller collection. It's hard to get that visibility to a wider audience, to kind of let them know, firstly, that you are actually there and that you kind of do have these things in your collection, but also finding ways of actually sharing them with people and showing them to people, because your time and your resources are always limited. And it's very difficult to try and digitize an entire collection and get that online. But having somewhere like this that can showcase maybe just one or two special items, or, you know, keep adding to that so that you've got more and more building up over the years, it makes it a little bit more manageable while still achieving that sort of capacity to share them with people that maybe wouldn't even ever be able to come to visit you in person because of their, you know, their location or their access needs. It just means that you're meeting a whole new set of people that you otherwise wouldn't have shared your collection with. I think most people that work in collections, you know, their kind of end goal is always that they want to share their collection with as many people as possible. So it's really nice that this kind of site gives people another tool to be able to do that.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much. I think we're going to open it up to some questions from the audience now, but thank you so much to all of you who have joined us, to all of the panelists. Thanks so much, Rachel, Madhu, Janet, Alison and Esther. Thanks, Jack, as well, for your support on the tech, and thank you, Kate, as well, who I believe is hopefully going to be going through some of the questions for the panelists. So thank you very much.
Yeah, if anybody's got any questions, if you want to put them in the Q&A, I will relay them back to whoever they're for. I'll give you a minute to have a think. Also, just to flag that we will be hosting a couple more events over the next few weeks, which will give you an opportunity to look at the website with different people who've worked on it. So do keep an eye out for those. We'll share information about that as well. Oh, I think you're on mute, Amber.
Yeah, classic. I think, is there another event that the Textile Biennial are doing tomorrow night as well, if you want to let people know about that?
Yeah, we've got another event tomorrow night, which is an event with British Ceramics Biennial down in Stoke. Obviously, we share similar dates with them, and we've got a number of artists who've worked on both biennials who'll be talking about their work tomorrow night. So that is at 6 o'clock tomorrow night, Jack, online, is that right?
6:30. The Eventbrite sale has ended now, so that I could get the final list. But if anyone is interested in joining, I will send the link out to you all via Eventbrite anyway. So if you want to join on that, then feel free.
yeah, say to flag, it's the last weekend of the British Textile Biennial this weekend. Venues are open Thursday to Sunday, 10 till 4, with the exception of Goodshire Chapel, which is just open Saturday and Sunday. So yeah, if you've not been already, please do come along. And yeah, Annette has said, could we send that link? And Ellie says, having all this together is so amazing. It makes it possible to pull eyes away from places like the V&A, which is, yeah, a very good point, which I do love, but has a very London-centric view of the world. Showcasing things available to see in Lancashire and having a focus on things made, worn, collected here is brilliant. So yeah, thank you for that. Ellie, that's good to hear, because that was the aim of the project. Has anybody got any other questions for any of our panelists? And if not, maybe we can. Oh, somebody else has got a question. And Joanne says, a wonderful collection, so fantastic to listen to the powerful history and celebrate this within the gallery. I'm a textile lecturer and artist, and I'm visiting Gawthorpe Hall this weekend for my birthday. Excellent. I'd love to have further chats for academic purposes and new courses, programs at Blackburn College. If there is anyone on from UCLan, do you have the date for the next the collaborative conversation we're doing? Because I believe you are doing one soon, if Amanda is on.
I think I've got it, Kate. I think it's the 1st of November at 4 p.m. No, sorry. Yeah, at 4 p.m. I think it's 4 till 6.
Yeah, okay. So yes, do look out for that and join that. So we will send that link out, and our event will be on the 9th of November, and we'll be talking about how artists can use the Lancashire Textile Gallery as a starting point for commissions. So that will be happening on the 9th. Morag says, does the collection ever get requests for pieces to be lent to travelling exhibitions, e.g. to the Dovecot in Edinburgh? I think maybe that's a question for you, Rachel.
Well, I was actually in Edinburgh and at the Dovecot studio this weekend, but yeah, we haven't had a lot of requests for touring exhibitions, but we do have, sporadically we do have requests for loans. We currently have 6 of our patchwork coverlets on loan to the Atkinson Gallery in Southport. So if any of you are interested in patchwork, there's some really beautiful examples that are on display. And there are actually quite a few of them are pieces we wouldn't be able to display at Gawthorpe because of the size of them, and they're kind of in a really amazing gallery in the Atkinson, where they can actually be seen in, with plenty of space around them to really appreciate them. So yeah, we do loan things to touring exhibitions and to kind of just fixed external exhibitions as well. We also have a bedspread, I think, that is on loan to Blackwell Arts and Crafts House in the Lake District. So yeah, we do where we can fulfill those, then we're happy to loan things.
Any more questions, or shall I hand back to you, Amber? Oh, Janet's got.
Am I allowed to ask a question? It was just, well, I've got 2 questions actually. One was whether any of the silk that was produced in North Lancashire ever made its way into Gawthorpe or any of the other textile collections, because it's kind of a part of the county that gets ignored a little bit, I think, Lancaster. And my other question was whether anybody else knows of any other musical expressions of textile production. I mean, we obviously have all the sort of broadside ballads and mill songs about, the history of the mills, but kind of trying to find new pieces, whether anybody else has heard of anything. I'd be really interested to know if anybody or anybody in the audience knows anything.
I don't know about anyone else, but for me, unfortunately, the very first part of your first question, Janet, got cut off. So I only heard the bit about asking if something had gone into the collection at Gawthorpe. So.
Oh, it was about the silk production in North Lancashire, in Gulgate and Lancaster.
I don't know. I don't think we have anything that I can think of off the top of my head, which is silk from those areas. I think a lot of the silk that we have is much earlier, and I think is mostly things like you know, it's actually mostly European silk fabric samples that we have, that we kind of know of their origin, and then there's lots of pieces that we don't have any provenance to suggest where they've come from. So there might, you know, there could well be some pieces in there, but if that hasn't been recorded before it's come into the collection, then we maybe don't have any provenance to support where it's from. So if anybody would like to donate some, you know, that would be an interesting thing to take in, because there are those nice little pockets of the silk industry outside of the real kind of hub that was in London. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see some examples of the more locally produced pieces.
Yeah, there are some examples at Rochdale Museum Service. They've got from Middleton. There was silk weaving industry in Middleton, so they definitely have examples in their service, but yeah, I'm not as familiar with the Lancaster, but yeah, they definitely do have in their collection.
Yeah, I think we have the only other ones that I can think of that are definitely UK based that we do know where they were made were Macclesfield ones, and the rest we just haven't got the information for them.
And in terms of music, I don't know if Kate, you were going to mention the Goodshire Chapel piece that's been on at the Textile Biennial. Currently will be open for the last time this weekend, I believe. The artists Nick Jordan and Jacob Cartwright have produced a sort of a huge Gesundheitswerk almost at Goodshire Chapel. But as part of that, they created some music looking into the Larks of Dean, and that's available as a record now. They pressed it onto vinyl. I'm sure Kate has more details of that, but certainly I saw a live performance of it when I was up at the Biennial, and they were using all kinds of, like a spinning wheel, all kinds of textile apparatus to make the actual music itself. Kate, I think you're on mute.
Sorry, should have looked. You can buy the vinyl actually at the exhibition at Goodshire, but hopefully we will have it available after the Biennial. But yeah, again, we will share information about that. We haven't quite, yeah, depending on what's available once the exhibition opens on Sunday. Well, closes on Sunday. Got another question from Anne Gibson, and this is about the textile collection. So it's one for you, Rachel. Is the new storage centre open for study?
Well, it's not at the moment because we are currently just installing the racking that will hold all the stores of the collection. But we're hoping that I think by sort of maybe late spring next year, it will be open for bookings for study visits again. So it's, you know, we are going to have to close access to it while we actually physically move, you know, 30,000 items across there. But yeah, we want to reopen it as soon as possible so that people can then book either as individuals or groups to come and study the collection, you know, as they normally would have been able to do at Gawthorpe. And the new room will be much better, much brighter, not as dark, and the access to the building is much easier. There's better public transport and better sort of physical access to the building without steps and things like that. So we should be able to cater to a lot more people more easily. So that's good news. So hopefully, if you haven't got something that's really urgent that you need to come look at, you'd be able to come and join us probably from sort of May onwards, I think, of next year.
Right, and then we've got another question, which I think is one for you, Janet, from Joanne.
Yeah, Joanne, if people can't see it in the chat there, Joanne is answering my question about whether there are other pieces of sound art that express the feel of what it's like in a textile mill. And she says that her partner recorded and created a piece of music with stories and loom sounds capturing the essence of life in the mills from the people who work there. And yes, I would love you to be able to send me that, please, Joanne. I guess we will be able to share our contact details in some way, Kate. Yeah,
if you're happy to do that, we can send them out to people after this event. That'd be great.
Yeah, and if that audio file is hosted somewhere online as well, you know, then if you are kind of interested, you might be able to post a link to it in a comment on Janet's exhibition, and then anyone else that maybe is interested in the work that Janet's done would come across it and hopefully go and visit it and experience it themselves as well. So that would be really useful if you don't mind doing that.
So one final question here for any of the panelists, which I'll read out, is I'm interested in the relationship of the women who wove, printed and stitched these textiles and what they actually wore themselves, or the quality of cloth they came into contact with domestically on a daily basis. Perhaps impossible to know, but does anyone have any thoughts on this? The production of beautiful, valuable cloth and the worn reality of those who made it. Great question.
Yeah, I think it's a sort of sad thing that is sort of true about a lot of different collections, in that the sort of wealthier end of the spectrum of fashion is what is usually kept and preserved in the collections. And I think that is slowly beginning to change as people realise the sort of lack of representation of working class, you know, costume across collections. So it is difficult to kind of find, you know, a wide variety of examples, and you know, to give you a better understanding of, you know, the variety that there would have been for people, or is the surviving, you know, is the kind of similarity of the surviving examples indicative that people didn't have that much variety if they were, you know, of a more sort of limited means to spend on their clothing. But hopefully, you know, more sources will become available as, you know, things are, rather than being thrown away, if there is a value kind of seen, sort of perceived in those items that wouldn't traditionally have been the first contenders to be donated to a museum collection, maybe more sources will become available. And that's definitely a really interesting avenue of study, not just in dress, but also in things like the lace making industries and, you know, the sort of other industries that are creating accessories and things like that. The level of quality of accessories and products that the women were making would probably be far above what they would actually be able to afford to use themselves. So their only real time that they get to spend in contact with them is when they're creating them for a much wealthier client. So it's it's an interesting kind of area to study and to look at that, you know, that kind of dynamic, I guess, between the clients and the workers.
Yeah, and Ethel Carney Holdsworth wrote about it. She wrote about the clothes that the workers were wearing in the factories, you know, how it was made of the shoddy, the cheapest cloth, and how it was, you know, only just thick enough to keep out the water, to keep out the cold. You know, it was threadbare and unable to be replaced, because they just didn't have enough money to clothe and feed themselves. So particularly in her novel This Slavery, even if you just read the first few chapters about the two sisters and getting ready to go to the mill, you can read how life was for them.
Thank you both, that's brilliant, and I think that's probably all we've got time for. So thank you everybody for coming, and thank you to Amber for hosting and all the panelists, and hopefully we'll see you at the next event.
Thanks so much, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.